Welcome to Epg Pathshala. My name is Purendra Prasad. I am professor in the Department of Sociology, University of Hyderabad. Today I will be talking to you about Sociology of Health course, the first module, Health and Disease. Let me introduce you to basic concepts in Sociology of Health course. Although the concepts health, disease, illness, sickness, suffering looks very commonsensical, each one of them have a different connotation in the sociology of health literature. Take for example health or disease. How do we define them? When you meet the other person, what you ask them is, how are you? The other person normally says that I am fine. What does that mean? You are trying to actually indicate, your both physical, mental and social well-being. When somebody says I am fine, it is not simply about physical well-being. And therefore, I think sociology of health concepts are very important for everyone to understand. Okay, when you look at the distinction between health and disease, disease actually is defined in medical terms as absence of health. So when you mean that when somebody is diseased, you are trying to say that it's an abnormal state. It is not normal. What is normal? What is abnormal? Biomedical scientists actually define normality in terms of your physical well-being. What if I have arthritis but I am fine? That doesn't mean that because I have arthritis I need to be actually labeled as diseased. So the distinction is not in terms of simply absence of disease, actually is talked in terms of good health, but it should be seen in a comprehensive manner. So there are three different models or approaches to understanding the health and disease. One, it's called biomedical approach to health. Second, it's called psychological model of health. Third one is sociological or socio-cultural model of health. Okay, how does biomedical model actually define health? Biomedical model defines health in a very objective manner. It only talks in terms of quantifying the illness dimension of it. Meaning abnormality actually is quantified. The negative state of mind actually is only talked about. So when biomedical science actually defines health, it is derived from a particular philosophical kind of a position, which is derived from a philosopher called Descartes. Descartes actually privileged mind over the body. Mind is supposed to be the only media through which a person actually communicates, while body is supposed to be the passive one. So based on Descartes, based on this Cartesian dualistic model, biological kind of a approach actually defines health only as physiological and anatomical kind of a body. Okay. And that is where disease actually is measured in terms of what actually lacks. So, in terms of a person lacking something, okay, it is something like a mechanistic model. If a particular machine actually is a machine runs into a problem, you take to a workshop and bring it back to the normalcy. That is how biomedical model also compares the human body to a machine, and it actually says that you can repair the human body like a machine. Psychological model actually questions this biomedical approach to health, and psychological model talks about individual as important. It is not simply in terms of one particular organ within a body, but what you need to understand is individual. Okay. See, this individual person has emotions, feelings, anxiety. So, these are all important dimensions. Okay. So, psychological model of health actually questions the disease being reduced simply to mechanistic kind of a model. Okay. And psychological model actually talks about giving importance to experience of the individual. Okay. In fact, Arthur Kleinman actually says that if a person actually goes to a doctor and explains what he is going through, that is called an illness model, meaning that whatever his perceptions are, that is being actually articulated. And the doctor sees that person and tells him or her that X and Y and Z is a problem, and therefore this is the prescription that you need to take. That is the actually disease approach. So, when a person walks into the clinic, he actually articulates his or her perception, that is the illness, the experience of a person, while a person leaving the clinic actually he goes back with the biomedical notion, that is the disease model. So, in the Arthur Kleinman and other social scientists who advocate psychological model actually critically engage with the Cartesian dualism, saying that individual experience and emotion and feeling are as important as the physical kind of abnormalities. However, the sociological or the sickness model actually goes beyond the disease and illness perceptions. It says that individual is not adequate because individual need to be located within a particular society. Okay. So, how does his own self, his own perceptions, experiences, emotions actually come from? They are basically trained or received in terms of the socialization process. So, the social location of individual is as important in terms of defining health as much as individual experience and physical abnormality. And therefore, in a commonsensical manner, health and disease actually are used as if they are just simply common words, but they have deeper meanings, and these deeper meanings are explained within sociology of health to actually not understand the scientific and the social science explanations, but also philosophical kind of a roots of these perceptions and these theories that have come from. This is where disease, illness, sickness are defined in terms of three different models. So, defining health and disease is a complex phenomena. We also need to understand historical dimensions of defining these terms. So, when you look at medicine, religion, law, aesthetics, a lot of mediating factors through which these concepts actually have acquired the meaning the way today we use them. So, if you look at for instance medicine, it is only within the allopathic or the dominant biomedical kind of a model that it actually talks about disease or health as an abnormal or physiological state. If you talk about Ayurveda, talk about Unani medicine, talk about Siddha medicine, homeopathy or other alternative kind of medical systems, conceptualize human body and mind as holistic, as together, as organic. Okay. So, the way the history of actually understanding body, defining health and disease actually has evolved over a period of time historically in different societies. In the Western societies, the way after industrialization, the rise of scientific kind of a temperament, the Enlightenment philosophy, which gave rise to certain notion of defining the health and bodily kind of a health. Okay. While Ayurveda, Chinese medicine or Unani, they actually conceptualize body in a unified holistic manner, and they also talk in terms of balance, equilibrium. They always say that it is important to maintain both the social kind of a well-being and that of the physical well-being. Okay. So, there is no one set of idea of disease and health that has been derived from vacuum. It actually evolved over a period of time. Okay. So, the way social theory evolved, the way concepts actually have also been redefined, and therefore, today what we see disease and health as the dominant biomedical notion has been only the recent 200 years of experience of evolving and acquiring a different set of meaning. If you look at religion for instance, okay, the way religion actually influences the notion of health and disease, lot of notions in terms of purity and pollution, lot of rituals that are performed, the way religious kind of rites and hymns, all of it actually is correlated with the notions of bodily purity and bodily health. In fact, one of the social scientists, British sociologist by name Mary Douglas, she says that religion actually is the earliest kind of a form which has given rise to the meaning of bodily purity and bodily pollution. Okay. She says that if you look at different kind of religions, whether it is Hinduism, Christianity, Islam and Buddhism and other religions, you have different notions of health and purity that are derived. Okay. In the Indian context, if you look at purificatory rites, okay, in order to usher in good health, each one needs to purify themselves with the cow's urine, which is supposed to be the most Puritan thing. Cow dung is used by the rural communities in different parts of the country to purify the impure things in their house. Okay. And similarly, lot of Hindu rituals where they actually represent the bodily health and well-being. Okay. Similar kind of rituals are there in other religions as well. Why is it that certain kind of meat actually is preferred and certain kind of meat is actually banned or proscribed. Okay, it has to do with the religious notions. Okay, so eating a particular kind of meat actually is acceptable, while other meat actually generates lot of heat in the body, and therefore a lot of communities do not eat a particular kind of meat. Okay, they have a religious kind of an explanation saying that what is sacred, what is not sacred, and sacred things are supposed to be the ones which we should leave aside from human kind of consumption pattern. Okay, so all that I am saying is the religious kind of beliefs and practices emanating from different religious kind of domains define health and disease in different societies. Okay. Similarly, when you look at the legal system, okay, if you talk about law, law evolves from the customs, norms and tradition of each society. Okay. So, what was a norm becomes actually a rule or a law at a different points of time. Okay. So, law does not come straight away and then actually human beings start practicing it. Why is it that homosexuality in 18th century or even early 19th century was taken as deviance, but today homosexuality is taken as normal? So, the way each of these concepts actually are defined by law, okay, has a trajectory needs to be examined. Okay. So, the way health is actually defined, regulated and actually policies are made, this is based on certain legal provisions. Okay. So, the way state actually regulates the healthcare system, and it also talks about keeping the kind of safeguards, okay, defining actually certain mandatory things that different communities need to follow, all that is to do with the legal kind of provisions that state actually formulates. So, in that sense, okay, defining health and disease and what actually contributes to good health, what actually obstructs the promotion of good health, all these things have not only in terms of medical kind of a definitions, but non-medical domain is as important. Religion actually plays a very important role, legal system plays a very important role. Similarly, the community kind of perceptions play a very important role. In that sense, there are actually broader non-medical factors that influence, that actually contribute to the definition and practice of health and disease. And therefore, WHO has defined in 1978 that health actually is not absence of disease, it is about well-being in terms of physical, mental, social kind of factors. So, the recognition that social, political, economic and other factors play as significant role in contributing to health and disease is something that has been accepted by World Health Organization, and that is how WHO's definition actually is now practiced across the world. So, what have we actually talked about? We were talking that health and disease are a complex phenomena. It is actually defined by WHO as a more comprehensive kind of a concept in terms of social, mental and physical well-being of the person. And so, the definition actually moves from organismic level, meaning that the way biomedical model defines in terms of abnormality in one particular organ, while the psychological model talks about the individual kind of experiences as important, while the socio-cultural model talks about the social factors and cultural factors which are important. Okay. So, the way we are moving from organ to individual to collective or social. Okay. So, these actually provide three different perspectives in understanding health. Okay. So, when you go back and look at the organismic level, okay, it has changed today the way the medical scientists and medical professionals actually understand human body. Okay. One of the social theorists by name Michel Foucault says that the way the language and grammar of the doctors actually has changed if you look at 18th century medicine and 19th century medicine. 18th century medicine, the way when patient goes to a doctor, the conversation used to be, how are you, and can you explain what is happening in terms of your health. But today the 19th century medicine asks the question, where does it hurt? So, simply meaning that it is focusing only in terms of a particular organ and its abnormality, while the psychological kind of model actually moves away to the individual kind of analysis. Here again, when we are talking about individual, it is shaped by a lot of collective kind of behavior. Okay. So, when you look at the way individual is defined, okay, for instance, okay, the most individualized kind of a thing called suicide, for instance, Emile Durkheim, a sociologist, actually says that suicide, which appears as an individual phenomena, is actually a social fact. Individual actually commits suicide not simply in terms of one's own kind of perceptions, but it is largely shaped by the social kind of relations and the social setting. Similarly, when a person actually falls sick, when a person actually tries to go and seek treatment, they are all to be seen in terms of a larger social kind of a setting. Okay. And that is why Max Weber, another sociologist, says that we need to understand the underlying meanings of the person, the way one expresses. Okay. When somebody says that I am not well, or I have a particular kind of a disease, the lay perception or the ordinary person's perception is actually different from a scientific or a medical professional's perception of a particular kind of a term. Both of them may be using the same term, but they do not actually mean the same thing. Okay. For example, when somebody in Gujarat actually says that ashakti lageche, meaning that I am not feeling well, ashakti is not here simply weakness, they are expressing what they are undergoing. It could be actually intense fever, it could be in terms of malaria, it could be in terms of lot of mental kind of a disturbance, it could be in terms of sadness that one particular person is going through because of death in a family, loss of crop or other kind of factors. to simply understand Ashakti, meaning that weakness, and provide a kind of vitamins and certain kinds of injections does not lead anywhere. Okay? And that is the reason why each of these terms have different meanings in different cultures. Okay? And those different terms actually need to be understood in its specificity. Okay? That is very important for actually providing the comprehensive kind of notion of health and disease. Okay? And today actually a lot of people talk about risk. Okay? Again here risk is actually defined in terms of personal risk, individual risk, but Anthony Giddens or Lupton and other kind of theorists, Beck and others actually talk risk actually as a larger and collective kind of a phenomena. If you have to understand this, what is called as the health risk, which is seen only in terms of personal kind of a domain, it cannot be understood unless you actually understand the larger social setting under which this personal risk is actually produced. Okay? So, in different cultures, in different societies, you have different kind of notions of risk. Okay? Accordingly, health behavior actually is also defined. Okay? So, why is it that when a particular kind of a person with certain social background, okay, comes and explains his disease as something which is simply physical or certain kind of pain only, because he or she thinks that is the way doctors actually understand. If he actually explains in his own common idiom, the medical professionals may actually dismiss and say that you do not have a disease. So, in order to reach out to the medical professional, they actually articulate in the language that is required for the medical professionals. So, in that sense, I think we need to understand that these collective kind of notions are derived from the different social settings. Okay? And I think it is important for us to understand these terms rather than reduce them, rather than simply actually use a deductive kind of model to say that this is illness and this is disease and this is kind of a healthy state. Okay? And most of the sociologists have been arguing that the cause of disease actually is multifactorial, meaning that it has a different kind of causative factors. It is not simply in terms of physiological factors alone. Okay? If it is multi-causative, then the diagnosis also will have to actually incorporate non-medical dimension to understand what actually a person is going through. To just illustrate a small example, one of these British anthropologists, Evans Pritchard, studied a community called Nuer in Africa. Okay? And one particular Nuer, the NUER, Nuer community actually are the pastoralists. They actually live on their life actually revolves around the livestock. So, when a shepherd actually takes these cattle and sheep actually for grazing, suddenly this boy actually gets hurt because a boulder actually comes and falls on his toe. The moment actually he got hurt, this boy asks a simple question saying that, why me? Why did I get hurt? Is it simply about, a kind of a physiological kind of a thing? He was not thinking only in terms of the pain that he is actually experiencing, but he is trying to relate what must have caused him this particular kind of, accident or this particular kind of event. Okay. Is it because I violated certain kind of social norms in my community? Is it because certain kinds of punishment that I am actually receiving in this particular time? So, he turns philosophical to answer a simple kind of a question when he gets physically hurt. So, each of these communities have actually a different explanations, okay, and these explanations provide them solace, and therefore, when they have a particular kind of abnormality, whether it is physical or non-physical kind of abnormality, they try and address it in a broader level. Unless we try and incorporate the holistic notion of health, we will actually be limited by the narrow definition of the biomedical understanding of disease. Okay. And therefore, the biomedical notion of disease and health is only a recent phenomena in the post-industrial kind of situations where the notion of disease actually is, individualized, depoliticized, while sociologists argue that we need to actually understand each of these disease and actually health in a larger social context, in a political kind of a context, in a collective kind of a context to grasp the meaning of disease and health. Therefore, understanding basic concepts like disease and health, illness and sickness, misfortune and suffering are very important in terms of actually, understanding the broader sociological kind of concepts and theories, so that we can actually understand how a particular kind of a individual phenomena is explained sociologically. What is defined as a biological phenomena is actually a sociological phenomena for us. In that sense, I think this course actually, this first module introduces the students to the basic concepts through which I think, both the historical, the political and philosophical kind of roots of these concepts actually can be explained further. The basic objective of this module is to analyze the concepts in sociology of health. So, we started off with the concept of health, concept of disease, and in this module we were trying to explain that what appears to be a very commonsensical kind of terms have deeper philosophical meanings, sociological kind of explanations to it, and what is actually interpreted as organismic or individual kind of a phenomena is to be understood in terms of collective phenomena, is to be understood in terms of a political kind of a phenomena. And there are different ways of understanding health and disease. While biomedical science in the last 200 years has defined health and disease simply in terms of physiological abnormalities, there is a historical and philosophical basis on which these particular notions have come about. It is based on the philosopher called Descartes, who tried to privilege mind over body. Whereas the earlier systems of medicine, starting from Ayurveda to Unani to Chinese medicine, actually have a broader understanding of the notion of health. So it's important to actually understand both the biomedical understanding and that of alternative medical kind of systems understanding of health and disease. Simply speaking, we should not be understanding health in narrow technical kind of term. It needs to be, understood in a particular social context and in a cultural kind of a context. There are several theories which explain these things within sociology, while there are liberal theories or non-Marxist kind of theories explain health and disease in terms of certain minimalist, certain liberal kind of tendencies in terms of how health can be understood. While Marxist kind of theories define health in terms of understanding it or correlating it with inequality. Okay. So the way they talk about health, ill health, health and its correlation with inequality, there are different interpretations. To sum up, health or disease actually are very closely interlinked. They are not actually mutually exclusive categories. We can be in a healthy state, at the same time we can also be in a ill healthy state. They are not mutually exclusive. Okay? And each of these disease situations have multiple causative factors. Only if we are able to incorporate both medical and non-medical causes, one can actually comprehend the concept of health and disease. And for further actually readings, please go through the references given at the end of the module, and you also have web links that are provided which would help you to actually understand the concepts that have been explained in the module. Thank you.